Okay, so to start, let's get an overview of each of the features that are available that connect Apptivo to Google Apps. So in general, the way to look at both systems is when you sign up for either Apptivo or Google Apps, they're business management platforms that come with a core set of collaboration features. So you have email, you have a calendar, you have your task list, and then you also have document and contact management. Now, both systems have the equivalent services. They function very similarly to each other. Although the connection really is that, well, first of all, the email is only housed inside of Google. Apptivo can simply connect to other email services. Apptivo is just an email client. But then also, when you view, let's say, your calendar events inside of Apptivo, they're able to be placed into the context of your business data. So let's go ahead and let's kind of talk about that real quick and break down what we call contextual collaboration. Because if you're an existing Google Apps user, what you're used to is you can run over to your calendar. Right here, I've got nothing on there because this is actually a fresh account. Looks like I have to run through this stuff. All right. Yeah, it's actually the first time I've been in here. But I click on an event. I go add it in. I can say what it's for. So I can say this is a meeting with Jake. And then I'd have to come in and I have to go invite attendees and all. This will come from my contact database, but you'll see I actually have no contacts inside of Google as of right now. So the biggest thing is when you schedule this event, although you're inviting Maxine or Jake, one of the contacts in your address book, there's no direct way to look at an event in Google and then say, okay, well, what was the last thing I spoke to Maxine about? Can I go look at a history of deals with Maxine's business? Being able to go and find these insightful pieces of information before you actually attend the meeting is really what Apptivo is all about. It's about connecting your business data. So if we have an event meeting with Jake inside of Google, it's kind of isolated on its own. But if we hop over into Apptivo and we look at the Apptivo calendar, you'll see I've got this event, Lunch with Jack. What Apptivo does is it links it with your business data. So here I'm looking at the same event. It's pretty much got the same fields as Google. If I flip back and forth between Apptivo and Google, then what we see is the only real unique thing is this field called associated with. Now for this, you'll notice that there's an employee and then there's also a contact name right here, Jack Calendar. So this is actually a link to the contact sitting inside of your CRM software, meaning I can click on this, it'll bring up Jack's contact. Here I can get his phone number or email address, any other details that I have stored inside of my database. And then if I wanted to, I could go to the detailed view of that contact and get the complete history. So just like Google already has a built-in contact system, actually go ahead, I'm going to bring you into a more complete account. Here's the completed Google account with a ton of contacts. It's actually already synced with Apptivo. But let's just go ahead and quickly check out one example to show you the difference between the contact systems. So here's my Google contact. This is just like a Google contact that you can create without Apptivo. Nothing special at this point. Now, if we go into the Apptivo system and we check out this contact, we're going to begin to see the additional amounts of information that are here. So I'm going to use that single sign-on link, and don't worry, I am going to show you how to set up all this stuff in just a few moments. This takes me into the contact system here, so I'll actually go into my contacts app. And we were just looking at Maxine Johnson, so we should be able to find Maxine here as well. Now here's the same profile. We just see the level of detail that's been included and increased here. So Apptivo can have custom fields, anything you want to set up that are available across the organization. Can also have lots of other information. The other key is you have all these tabs across the top. So if I wanted to see calendar events that are relevant to just Maxine, I can click on this calendar tab right here. And of course, I got nothing in this view, but if I flip backwards, we'll see that we've had a few past events with them. We also have like this list view where I can check it out in that manner, but nothing upcoming. Same thing with checking out any tasks relevant to Maxine. And beyond that, there's some features that are unique to Apptivo, like the call log. There's just no facility to do this inside of Apptivo, where you can just record each call that you have with them, take down some quick notes. One thing that is inside of Google is your email. But Google doesn't have this sort of view where you just bring up a contact from your main event, from the calendar, and then instantly be able to see all the emails that they've sent to you and all the emails that you've sent out to them. This happens automatically, by the way. You never have to change the way you send emails. Like you can continue using Gmail. Apptivo is going to track everything automatically for you, just like this. And then some other areas like notes, documents, files you can store. But just in general, you have a much more robust contact record inside of the Apptivo end. And then it pushes the basic contact and address details over into Google for you. This contact is now available, for example, if I go to the Google Calendar, just let's say for some reason it's more convenient to come from Google. Well, if I go drafting up an email or trying to invite people, my whole contact database from the CRM is present here. So this is where you can start to see kind of everything's kept in sync. As far as using the Google tools, once you've configured these Apptivo connections, you're not really going to change the way that you have to use the Google tool. They're simply going to be enhanced by having Apptivo built on top, and then you can go into Apptivo to get even more deep levels of information about each contact and each email that you're working with, because it's going to have relationships and context with all of your other business data. So just in general, when you hear us talk about the phrase contextual collaboration, it's the concept of having one contact record or one record in the system, and then being able to see all the information related to it, but it's all centered around this common set of features. So for example, if I put in this event with Maxine, let's say I schedule an event with her. So it's not an all-day event. We just want to go ahead and set that. Say we're going to eat from 1 to 2:30. You'll notice it's associated with her. Just like inside of Google, I can go invite Maxine, and then maybe I want to invite some others as well. Maybe I want to invite another colleague in. So just like Google, I can add all these different associations. Oops, I don't really want to remove myself. And then the idea is that this would actually sync right on over into Google Apps. You could find it by going into my Google Calendar and checking it out that way, but Apptivo has a great unified agenda. So although it shows up in Google, when I view my calendar from Apptivo, it has the context of the data. So although this view kind of looks just like Google, the power is when I click on this, I'm going to be able to go view the full history. So here I've got Maxine. If I want her phone number, it's going to be right there. Whole history. If I want to know more about her account, like when's the last time that we invoiced their business, I can immediately get to that information. So I bring up their customer profile in Apptivo, and I could go find the history of invoices using our contextual collaboration up here. So this is really the power of the data inside of Apptivo. It's not meant to change the way that your calendar behaves. Your tasks are going to feel the same. You're going to be able to prioritize them pretty much the same. You're just going to notice things are a little bit more robust in Apptivo, but then the true power is the connections with your business data. Okay, so we kind of took a little detour there just to break down in general what we're trying to achieve and why you'd want to set up these syncs. So now let's actually run through, let's talk about each one of the features, and then what we'll do is we'll take that fresh Google account that we've been working with. We're going to connect this Google account to an Apptivo business. We'll show you how to configure the various syncs, and then we'll go back and we'll review what behavior you can expect after the syncs are actually configured. Okay, so let's just go ahead and run through this. By the way, I'm on a link that you can get to from the public website. After this webinar today, when you want to go ahead and set everything up yourself, if you want some reference for later on, you can always get to this page. Just go to apptivo.com. You'll see this box in the middle that says Integration with Google Apps. Just click on Learn More right there. And then this actually links you to each of the Google Apps features that we support. All right, so getting down to the features, we understand that basically Apptivo has a sync with each of the Google services. Each one of these different features can be turned on or off individually of each other. So for example, a lot of people will only use Apptivo for contact sharing. You just want to create a shared contact database and only look at it from the Google interface and just have everybody's Gmail accounts kept in sync. That's actually one very common setup that people do, although that's actually one thing that people would then lead into all the other features. So being able to get like the email history and the calendars with context, for that kind of full integrated setup, you will need to turn on each one of these features. So let's just kind of run through these other ones and chat about them real quickly. So the first one is not technically a Google integration. It's a generic integration that works with any IMAP email account, but this includes Google Apps. What this does is two primary things. First of all, it does not change the way that you use Gmail or Outlook or your preferred email client. You will continue exchanging emails with all of your contacts just as before. What will change are two things. One is the historical tracking. So when I mention that it happens automatically, what I mean is when we bring an email in, So we'll go back to this full demo account for a moment. Every one of your contacts, customers, and leads has an email record. For example, maxinejohnson08@gmail.com. So whenever you send or receive an email, we're able to read it from your IMAP server, and then we compare that against your CRM database, and we ask, does this match any one of your contacts, customers, or leads? And if the case is yes, then what we'll do is we'll associate that email to the record without ever prompting you or anything like that. So whenever you go to the emails tab of that customer record or that contact, you're going to be able to see every email they sent to you right here in the inbox. In addition to that, we're also reading the email that you send outward too. So that means that every email you send out to a contact would appear right here in the sent folder. One thing that's even a little bit cooler than this is you are able to see other colleagues' email as well, depending on the security settings that you specify. So for example, this is just the email that I've personally been sending in and out as Kenny Clark. If I wanted to see what maybe one of my colleagues has sent because they went out sick for the day, I can actually change that to show all emails. And then here is every email that I have access to. In the case of me being an administrator, I can access every email inside of the entire business. So that's the email integration. And there's one other little nice feature, which is a lot of the time you'll want to send emails, could be like a bulk email, and you want to have it personalized for each recipient. Like you wanted to say, hello, first name, as the introduction. So in that case, Apptivo also supports a system of email templates. So you're able to define these various templates inside of the Apptivo apps. And here you can see I can have an example for standard case entry response. In this case, what it'll do is it'll just have a standardized message, and it can take like the phone number and details stored in fields inside of the Apptivo system, and then insert them into this template. And I can do this kind of emailing in bulk as well. So a lot of the time sending outbound email will be better from the Apptivo interface. When you send from within Apptivo though, every email is pushed to the sent folder of Gmail, Outlook, or any of your other email clients out there. So you don't have to worry. The idea is that you should use whatever device is most convenient for that situation and count on that email being transferred to all of your different devices. All right, so that's the email integration. Let's go ahead and hop back to our other browser over here. Now let's talk about contact sharing. Contact sharing is our most popular Google integration. It's a very, very cool feature. What it does is it keeps your Apptivo CRM in sync with your Google contacts. You can make changes on either side. So if I update a contact's phone number from Gmail, it will transfer into the CRM. And then also, it can sync with all of your different Google Apps users. So if you have an organization of 30 people, all 30 people can have the same list of contacts inside of Gmail. Although, you can still have private contacts. So some users might have a shared pool of, let's say, 500 contacts, and then have a series of their own private contacts in addition to that. Part of this feature does introduce the categorization of your contacts, so we can keep that in sync. And just as a little note, if you were only looking for this one feature today, although you have to perform some setup and administration from the Apptivo interface, it's certainly possible to run this completely from the Google interface. So although one admin will come into Apptivo, you can create a configuration where each of your employees will never have to even know that Apptivo exists, other than just saying, oh, well, there's a group called Apptivo contacts because that's the system that syncs them. So this is pretty common where you need either a smaller segment of the users will use Apptivo to its full CRM system and then just only sync contacts to some, or some companies will have only the administrators inside of the Apptivo tool. It's certainly up to you and just what you're looking for today. But what this does is right here. We're looking at my Google contacts, and just like before, we saw there's all the basic details inside of here. You'll see I've got my categorization over here in the left column. And if we went to the Contacts app inside of Apptivo, we would see the same categorization over here in the left. So for example, I click on CEO. We see there's 6 different records. So if I head over to Google Contacts, click CEO, we see there's 6 different records. So that's the contact sharing functionality. And just a little side note on that, I mentioned that everybody has the same contacts. That's the default setup. You can certainly provide security rules where different teams of users will receive different sets of contacts. It's one of the more advanced setups of our contact sharing. All right, so from the most complex and widely used integration, we'll talk about another widely used one, but this one requires absolutely no setup. It's amazing. So Google Drive, What this allows you to do is you can attach Google Drive documents and add links into the relevant spots in Apptivo. So Apptivo, right out of the box, contains document storage. So for example, if I have a contract with Jack, or maybe I have a sales proposal, it'd be great to upload that document from my computer into this system. But in this case, I do create a second copy of the document, and then there's some document storage restrictions within Apptivo. So instead of that, you'll see that we have integrations with both Dropbox and Google, and they both behave pretty much the same, where I can click on this. What it'll do is it'll actually just take your current logged in user. So you'll see I'm currently logged in as this admin at Keg Computer. All I have to do is accept, and then it'll bring up this and tell me that I have absolutely no documents. And that's where we switch over to our better sample, and I'll show you an example with some documents in there. Okay, so here I go add Google Doc. Now I can browse just my individual recent ones. I could go browse by the folder list instead. And then when I select one, I can actually just attach it. You'll notice it says it's from Google. So if I click on this, it'll simply open up Google in a new window. So that's the Google Docs integration. The benefits of it, there's no setup. As long as you're logged into Google, it'll function just fine. And also completely avoids any sort of document storage, the storage limitations, or concerns over duplicating your documents. The other little tidbit there is you can upload directly from here. So you would upload into a Google Documents folder, and then this would attach it to this spot right here inside of Apptivo. All right, so that's our document management. Now let's talk about the calendar sync. This one's pretty basic, but it's also extremely commonly used. A lot of people live inside of their Google Calendar. So this is a bidirectional sync. Unlike the contacts, where for the most part you're going to want to create an Apptivo because there's a lot of extra data inside of there. The contacts you could create from Google if you have just a basic like first name, last name, phone number. And then there's no difference in the amount of data in Apptivo and Google. But in the case of a calendar, one of the keys is having the association with the contact that you're meeting with, for example. So if I've got a meeting with Jake, I don't have to retype his address. I can just click on Jake's contact and see the address there. So in this case, although I can create an event directly from Google and have it sync to Apptivo, it's strongly recommended that you create from Apptivo and then sync on over to Google. So the most common flow to sync an event would just be you're viewing a contact, you click on their calendar, and then I just create an event right here. It'll do the association for you automatically, and immediately upon creating it, it will sync it right over to Google. Okay, so that's the calendar sync. The task sync is pretty much identical to that. It's just a little bit lesser used because not as many people use Google Tasks. So this would actually, these last two are the most commonly, those most common features to ignore or not utilize. Task sync, it's only valuable, by the way, if you use Google Tasks. If not, then just using the Apptivo interface is much more robust, certainly recommended. So yeah, there's really nothing unique between that and calendar sync. And then we have the Google Forms integration, which the Google Forms integration is very basic. It just allows you, if it's one specific scenario, where if you have a website and you're only able to insert HTML, you're not able to do any sort of like programming on the website, then this allows you to put a web form that will take down some basic information, like a first name, last name, email, and then it can create a sales lead inside of Apptivo. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow any sort of modifications to the fields or questions that you ask. So if you do have any other websites, like let's say one that you are running with WordPress or even just one hosted on your own hosting, in that scenario, you can work with our API or our WordPress plugins in order to create a much more flexible and really just much better behaving lead form instead of the Google Forms integration. Okay, so those are the features. Just kind of, at this point, you'd want to figure out, well, what features do you actually want to utilize? And then it comes down to the setup. So when it comes to installing, we're always going to start from the Google Apps Marketplace. You're going to have access to an administrator account in Google Apps. So right here, I'm just on admin.google.com, and I'm logged into the admin of this Google Apps account. So it should look something like this. The key that we're going to be going to is Marketplace Apps right here. If you don't have this, you'll notice that there's a More Controls option on the bottom. You click on More Controls, and you should see Marketplace Apps down here. You can click and drag and move these all around. So today, what you're going to need to go into is Marketplace Apps and Security, because we're going to make some changes in both of these. The first thing we'll do is we'll go to Security, and we just need to make a quick change right here. So we want to select API Reference, and then you'll notice under API Access, I have the box Enable API Access checked. So if this is not checked, you need to check this, and then hit Save Changes. Okay, so basically what that allows you to do is when you go through the setup process for Apptivo, it'll allow you to import your employees. It's actually not a complete requirement, so if you're not able to find that or if you just don't feel like it, feel free to skip that step. Now the next part, we'll go back to our dashboard. It's all about the Marketplace apps. We have to install the Apptivo app. So we'll find this. I have no apps installed. In the new interface, it's this little plus sign up here. It says Add Marketplace Apps. We're going to click on that. And now we can just do a search for Apptivo. But here, you'll see that we have 3 different applications. We need to make sure that we pick the right application for you. Really what it comes down to, it's either going to be this first one that's just generically called Apptivo, or the second one. The question is, are you going to use the contact sharing alone, or do you plan to use more than the contact sharing integration? If you want to use anything other than just contact sharing, you install the main Apptivo app. Please note that you do not need to install both applications. So if you want all of the features, you install just the main app alone. You don't need to install the main app and the contact sharing app. This will contain contact sharing. So in this case, we want all the features. We're going to click on Install App right here. So it'll say it needs our permission. We'll just have to re-authenticate through our Google login. Make sure that we agree to the terms of services, and it should just default to turn on for KegComputer.com. This is the tests website that we're setting up. So I accept that. It says Apptivo has been added. You're going to want to click on this button right here that says Additional App Setup. I'm going to close my other windows, by the way. Okay, so this will take us into the Apptivo system. Now at this point, if you already had an Apptivo account, then it would log you in. The one consideration is, if you have an existing Apptivo account and you see a page right here that asks you for a business name, it means that you need to change your original Apptivo account. The key here is the email that you log into Apptivo with must be the admin email of Google Apps. So that means Apptivo must be signed up with admin@kegcomputer.com. If that's not the case, you need to change your employee email to admin@kegcomputer, or you need to add another administrator to Apptivo with this email. But no matter what, your Google Apps admin must be created as an admin inside of Apptivo, otherwise you cannot connect the two. Okay, so that's one scenario. You'll be logged in if everything's all proper. But also if you're a brand new user, then what will happen right here is you'll get a prompt that will ask you for the business name and the country, and it'll set you up with a brand new company and then put you to the same spot. Okay, so now we've basically logged into our business, and the first natural step of installing the app is it's going to try to import your employees. You'll see that I have a warning on my screen, because actually I did just set this up a few moments ago. It's telling me I have no new employees to import. This is because the current employee count is the same between Apptivo and Google Apps. But normally it would show a little interface here where you can just check off the users you have in Google, and then it will bring them into Apptivo automatically for you. This is the point where if you skip that security step that we went through earlier, you're going to receive a warning right here that says API access. It'll look like an error, but don't worry. You can just hit OK, continue on through. It'll still function just fine. Okay. So now I'm through. I've successfully connected Apptivo to my Google Apps account. But now I need to go turn on the features that I desire. So the first thing to do is just to double check that all the connections and everything went through appropriately. You will click on your name in the upper right corner, and then we're going to select Business Settings. Now from here, you're going to want to pick Sync Services. And we'll see that actually mine are already turned on because I forgot to disable the app earlier. So this one, it'll flip them on for you. If they're not already on, you need to just make sure that these are toggled to the on position. Now, this is one common point where people have run into issues. If you are not able to toggle these to on, it means that there's some sort of issue with connecting Apptivo to your Google Apps business. So in that case, just go ahead and reach out to our support team down here in the bottom left with the chat, and they'll definitely be able to help guide you in the right direction. But hopefully you're able to successfully turn these on, and this is one case where, okay, for example, if I don't want task sync, I can certainly have calendar enabled and task disabled. So these are the two general features that are just quick on and off switches. For the calendar sync and the task sync, you turn them once on for the entire business. There's no specific settings or anything like that for you to mess with. The contact sharing is a little bit more involving. So we'll talk about that in a moment. First, let's talk about email. So just to kind of bring up a recap of what we're running through here. Oh, looks like I accidentally closed that one. There we go. Just bringing back up our list of Google Apps features so we can run through them. So what we just looked at is calendar sync and task sync would be done. As discussed, the Drive integration doesn't require any sort of connection. And for the email, what we'll do is each user needs to set up their own email. You go into Apptivo, you click on your name, then you select Preferences. Then you will head over to Email. And this is where we can add an account. So in this case, we have admin. Then you'll just type in your normal password right here. And then you'll see it's already configured to Gmail. But otherwise, this is where you could just punch in any other connection details. So I'll hit Authenticate. For Google Apps accounts, you will commonly receive an authentication error. This means that you have to go into Google and there'll be a message in your inbox that's asking you to make some changes to your settings in Gmail, and then you can come back and re-authenticate. In this case, it worked okay, so our email is now up and running. But remember, you'd have to repeat that for each user. They all have to do it themselves. Now, the final feature that requires setup is going to be the contact sharing. So for this, we go into the Contacts application, and it's actually stored in the settings of the Contacts app. So over here, we'll see Google Apps integration in the middle. And right now you'll see mine is turned off, although it says I have 285 sync-enabled contacts. This basically means that if I turn this on, it's going to be able to take my 285 contacts that are already inside of Apptivo, and then we can move them on over into Google. So here's my current set of contacts. So we'll head back into those settings right here, and let's go turn it on. Now, the most common configuration here is the first switch must be on under any scenario. Otherwise, the sync's not going to work. Then the second one, sync shared contacts to my contacts. 99% of the time, you want this turned on. The primary reason is that there are many third-party sync services. For example, syncing to your iPhone or to your Android or to Outlook. And they will only sync contacts that are stored in your My Contacts group. So what this says is when Apptivo copies a contact to Google, it'll put it into our special synced group called Apptivo Contacts in addition to the My Contacts group. Then this last one, this is just going to depend on whether do you currently use either categories inside of Apptivo or do you use the groups inside of Google. So if I bring up that other demo business that had a bunch of data in it, we saw that I use a bunch of groups over here in the left. So in this case, you do want your category sync set up. Oops. Here we go. So I'd want to just turn on that one. And then you always leave the fourth option to turned off. Okay, so now I'll hit update. Okay, so basically this will turn on the sync. It might take some time for everything to appear over inside of Google. It'll start off by just showing you the two empty groups. So actually we can see one of my groups just came through. This one's just going to be like a list of the employees in the business. Oh, there we go. And we can see it's already starting to publish through the list of our groups, although it hasn't created any contacts yet. Oh, it's created 100 contacts. So you can see it moves pretty quickly as far as filling up the Google side of things. So here, my full database is coming on over. And now, for example, if I went to my Google Calendar, I should be able to go input a new event and that same contact we were working with earlier, Maxine. Now Maxine's available. Although I don't know why it said invalid. Oh, it looks like I have multiple email addresses for her. That might have been an issue with me importing my data a little bit earlier. What about a Jake? So yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just imported all this data right before this demonstration. It looks like I made a mistake with Maxine's contact. Yeah, so we can go check it out. We'll show you why that didn't work. So if I go into Apptivo and we look at her email here, this is why. It's just, that was an import issue on my side. This is actually supposed to be 2 emails. But this is actually one good example. So let's say you do have an error like that. I mean, it's very common to have issues. So maybe that was her home email address. So I update that. Now if I wait a few moments, I should be able to see the update get pushed across. Might take a minute since I just started the sync for the first time. But yeah, the idea is that you should just make edits here, and then after a little bit, the sync will run, because you can see I made the same error with her phone number. Yep, and then the sync would push those changes across. I don't really know if we want to wait for them to come. Yeah, a lot of time there's just a little sync delay. So it's still filling everything up here. Looks like I got my full 285 contacts. Now it just needs to receive the updates. But yeah, so that's the contact sharing. We got that all configured. Now at this point, you've done all of your connections. The only thing we really have left is just to spend a few minutes talking about how you're going to end up using them day to day. So let's just use